How would you quickly find the least or lowest common denominator of a large group of fractions? Now, in a previous video, I showed you how to find the least common denominator using prime factorization. And then in a later video, I showed you how to find the least common denominator using the greatest common factor, also known as the greatest common divisor. But if you had to find the least or lowest common denominator for a large group of fractions such as this by hand, what would be the most efficient way, the quickest way to do this? Well, if I had to find the least common denominator, I would do it in a table such as this. So I would just basically draw myself a little table. Just draw myself a little table. Right? So, and in the first column of the table, so in the left margin here, all I would do is I would just put in all of the denominators vertically. So I would start off with the first denominator, 12, and I would put it in here. Then the second denominator, 3. Then the third denominator, 18. The fourth denominator, 2. And the fifth denominator, 6. Now, then I would write myself a small list of the first few prime numbers. So what are the first few prime numbers? They are 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11. And if you can't remember the first few prime numbers, I have a video that basically shows you how to find the first prime numbers up to whatever length of list you want. So the first 30 of them or the first 40 of them, etc., etc. So take the first prime number on your list and ask yourself, are any of these denominators divisible by the first prime number? So are any of these numbers divisible evenly by 2? Well, 12 is clearly divisible by 2, and if 12 is divisible by 2, it means that at least some of these are divisible by 2. And if that's the case, take this 2 and write it up in the top row over here. So go ahead and write 2. And now, underneath the 2, for every one of the denominators, if that denominator is divisible by 2, write the result of the division of that denominator by 2. And if that denominator is not divisible by 2, just go ahead and write that denominator. So if, like in the first case here, we have 12. 12 is divisible by 2. So take 12 divided by 2 and write the result in the column over here. So you're going to get a 6. Now, for the very next row, you're going to have 3. 3 is not divisible by 2. So just go ahead and write 3. For all numbers that are not divisible by 2, just go ahead and copy them. Now for the next one, you have 18. Is 18 divisible by 2? Yes, 18 is even. 18 divided by 2 is equal to 9. What about 2? Is 2 divisible by 2? Yes, 2 divisible by 2 is 1. What about 6? Is 6 divisible by 2? Yes, 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. So go ahead and write 3. Okay, for the very next column, ask yourself, are any of these numbers, so in your rightmost column, divisible by 2 again? So are these numbers divisible by 2? Well, at least 6 is divisible by 2, and if at least one of them is divisible by 2, go ahead and write yourself a little 2. And now do the same thing. For every one of the numbers in this column, if the number is divisible by 2, write the result of that number divided by 2. And if the number is not divisible by 2, just copy the number over. So 6 divided by 2 is just equal to 3. 3 divided by 2, well, 3 doesn't divide evenly by 2, so just go ahead and write 3. 9 does not divide by 2, so go ahead and just copy 9. 1 does not divide by 2, so just copy 1. 3 does not divide by 2, so just copy 3. All right, now do the same thing. For the rightmost column, ask yourself, are any of these numbers divisible by 2? 3 is not divisible by 2. 3 is not divisible by 2, 9 is not divisible by 2, 1 is not divisible by 2, and 3 is not divisible by 2. So none of them are divisible by 2. Okay, that's fine. Are any of these numbers divisible by 3? Well, 3 is divisible by 3. 3 divided by 3 is just equal to 1. And because at least one of these numbers is divisible by 3, one of these numbers in this column is divisible by 3, go ahead and write yourself a 3. And now for every number that is divisible by 3, write the result of that number divided by 3. And for every number that is not divisible by 3, just copy the number over. So 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1. 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1. 9 divided by 3 is equal to 3. 1 divided by 3 does not divide, so just copy it over. 1. And then 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1. Now ask yourself, are any of these numbers in this latest column divisible by 2? Well, none of these numbers are going to be divisible by 2 because none of the numbers in the previous column were divisible by 2. And if none of the numbers in the previous column were divisible by 2, then none of these numbers are going to be divisible by 2 either. So are any of these numbers going to be divisible by 3? Well, 3 is going to be clearly divisible by 3, so go ahead and write yourself a 3 in the very next column up at the top. And now, again, for every number that is divisible by 3, write the result of that number divided by 3. And for every number that is not divisible by 3, just copy the number down. So we have 1, because 1 does not divide by 3. 1, because 1 does not divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is just 1. 1 does not divide by 3, so we just copy the 1. And 1 does not divide by 3, and we just copy the 1. And once you reach a column of 1s in the end over here, stop. So once you reach a column of 1s up at the end, just stop. And your lowest common denominator is just going to be the multiplication of all of the numbers up here in the top margin. So your lowest common denominator, your LCD, is just going to be equal to 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. So that's going to be equal to 2 times 2 is 4 times 3 times 3, which is equal to 4 times 3 is equal to 12 times 3, which is going to be equal to 36. Whoops, 36. So your lowest common denominator is equal to 36. So that is how you can very quickly and efficiently find the lowest common denominator for a large group of fractions using a table method.